Dear friends, in this particular class on C programming, I am going to talk about bit fields. Bit fields are very fundamental to programming language requirements. So we will get started on this particular class. As part of the agenda, I am going to cover what is a bit field and why do you need bit field programming in C language. And then we will look into one representation of requirement and then try to come out with a design using bit fields for that requirement. And then I will go ahead and try to do a coding. It's a coding from scratch about what we have done as part of the previous step. So we are going to code a memory representation for a bit field kind of a data type, and coding is from scratch. And then we'll also try to cover and see the data types that we use for bit fields. Are they significant? Are they important? And then those qualifiers, whether it's a signed versus an unsigned. So we will try to understand the qualifiers are also significant or not. Once we have understood the concept, we will try to cover at least 4 or 5 of tricky coding examples just to master the C programming in terms of bit fields. And again, as part of our class, I will delve into the kernel and I will try to give some live examples about where we use bit fields in the kernel. Okay, so we will get started with the introductory part, which is bit fields and what is a bit field actually, right? Now, when you talk about bit field, the first thing we have to understand is we are talking about bits, not a byte. We are talking about bits, and bits can have width. So suppose in a requirement, you will have 1 bit to represent something, or you require 2 bits. So these bits generally have some width. So you say I want a bit field with width 1 bit or 2 bits or 3 bits and something like that. Okay, so that is the real meaning of a bit field. But the question is, why do you require a bit field? Bit field is very important because when you do programming, when we implement some real life say hardware, fixed hardware representations, think about a printer. So suppose you're writing a driver for a printer and then you want to send some control signals to the driver. Okay, so control signals, as we know in microprocessor or embedded programming, we can have certain bits which are turned on and off. So you can have multiple such operations, like a printer multifunctional device. It can do a print operation. It can print some pages, or it can do some sort of a fax. So you can do a fax on that. It can do a scanning. So multiple functions are possible. Okay, so when multiple functions are possible, how do we invoke a explicit operation? So we can make use of bit fields, because the driver, the hardware manufacturer for your printer will give you certain choices saying that to program me, use turn on this control bits, right? So when you think about some fixed hardware representation, that time bit fields are really necessary. They are mandatory parts. Not only hardware, we have many choices for bit fields actually. Okay, we can think of protocol programming, any protocol generally, right? So protocol programming also have similar requirement like the printer example which I gave you, because protocols have headers, and headers will have explicit bytes and sometimes bit requirements to be set. Now coming to C language, now there is a requirement in our programming paradigm that we have to code for those hardware or protocols, various kind of protocols. So how do we implement it? So C language implements bit field inside a structure. So you can define a structure as a bit field. Okay, so when you talk about bit field in a structure, we have as you can see here, we have a type specifier, right? So we have to specify whether it's an integer, character, those kind of stuff. And then we have to declare a name for that, and then what is that particular width associated with the field that you are interested in. Width generally is governed by your hardware or protocol requirement. So before going further into that, we have to really understand with some sample representation. Suppose you have a hardware in which you want to program that hardware. using C programming language, right? So consider that we are looking into this example. It's a 1 byte of information. So least significant bit and most significant bits 0 to 7, right? Okay. Here I'm using 0 to 7 in anticipation that I'm working on, for example, say Little Indian system at this point of time. Okay. So this is least significant. I go towards most significant. We have a requirement that we have an F1, field 1 bit. Then this particular bit is not going to be used because that's what the hardware says. Don't turn on this bit. So hardware says these 2 bits are useful. Then again hardware says don't turn on this, and then these bits are useful. So the question is, how are we going to design this entire memory representation for our software requirement, right? So we'll write a struct bit field for this, and then we'll write it live actually. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will try to do it live in terms of an example, live example, right? So let's get started on designing this particular requirement. So what you see here is a struct SF bit. So we are going to populate it based on our understanding of the problem. So we will say it's an unsigned character. Why I'm using character? Because as you see we have only 1 byte, 0 to 7 bits are there. I'm using unsigned because that F1, F2 and F3 represent some data. So we should have an unsigned for that. Having said that, we can now jump into making sure that we have a field representation F1. So if you see the design diagram, F1 is just a single bit. So we say F1:1, which means we are interested in 1 bit and the name of that is F1. Similarly, we can go and then design our second part, which is F2. F2 is how many bits? F2 is 2 bits. So we are saying there are 2 bits. So you write 2. Similarly, we will go ahead and try to do our field 3. So field 3 is 3 bits. So we are writing like this. So this is an elementary level of design which will allow us to create a bit fields in a structure for a 1 byte length of information. Now the question is this representation 100% correct? How do we know it is correct or not? We have to figure out little more detail. For example, if we are saying F1 is 1 bit, what about this one which is missing in this area? We have not represented anywhere. So how will the system know, or how will the compiler know that F2:2 really represents these 2? Why not these 2? Correct? So if there are holes or if there are reserved areas or unused areas in your bit representation for that entire 1 byte, then we also have to accommodate for it. So having said that, what we should have done or what we should do to solve this problem is, let's take it on the right hand side. Okay, so what we should do is we should accommodate for these people. We should accommodate. So even though we have done things very correctly, but we have to accommodate for this area and then this area. We can give some name. So the conventional thing is we call it, they are reserved or unused. So we can call it as reserved, RES, reserved 1. So this is just a name. You can have R1 or any name here. Similarly, I am saying reserved 2. So what it really means is we are kind of reserving, they are unused. So in our design, we have to modify the structure. And how do we accommodate for that? We will accommodate by simply inserting the RES:1. So which means that the next bit after F1 memory name location is RES1, reserved 1. And then the next 2 obviously will be 2 bits here. And then RES2 came into picture. So we are going to make sure that it is going to be RES2 here for 2. And there was a typing mistake, RES1. So with this representation, we are now foolproof. We fully understand what we are. So this is a way we implement a requirement into a code, a design first. So we are kind of designing the structure at this point of time. Okay, so this information is going to be useful for us when we do the live coding for this entire memory representation. Okay, so let's go back into the presentation and then try to look into the next part. So what is the next part? The next part that we have is we are going to do a lab demo for the same problem. So write a program SAN-Foundry bitfield.c which represents the various bit locations of the given diagram. So we are going to modify bit 0, this is F1. bits 2 and 3, we are talking about this, and then bits 5 to 7. And give a name to these memory locations. We have already done them. We have given the name F1 and then F2 and F3. We already designed the structure. So what we will do quickly will be, we will code that structure, run the program, and then that will be a true testimony of whether how we have learned this entire bit field operations. Okay, so we'll do a bit field operations in terms of a C program now as a live. So let's get started in the lab exercise. So we will do the coding SF bitfield. So we will say SF bitfield.c, and this is going to be a live code. So some typing mistakes are bound to happen. We will correct it as we move along, and there will be some alignment issues that you can see here, but that we can easily solve it. We don't have to worry. So I'm just doing indentation, a proper indentation. So this is done. Now let's go ahead and try to do the coding part of. Okay, so I'm declaring one struct SF builds. So I'm declaring one object for it. Now this object we can assign b equals to say 1, but not 1. We have to go into the field. F1 equals to 1. So it is as good as accessing a member or a field of a structure. So if you say b dot F1, similarly we can say b dot F2 equals to, so we want to write, for example, say in that 3, and then we say b dot F3, and then we might want to write 5 there. Okay. So this is a very simple operation. The objective here is to make sure that whatever we designed, it works the way that we wanted it to be. So if we do a simple printf, and we'll do a 3% Ds, in the sense that we simply want to print those values. So the way we access those bit fields is same as the way we access the structure field, right? So a structure member or a structure field. So b dot F3. So when we run this particular code, we should be able to get what we have assigned it to. So it looks pretty simple at this point of time. So let's do a compilation on SF bitfield.c. So compilation is fine. Let's do a runtime. So runtime is also giving us 135. So when you see this, this was the 135 that we wanted, and we are similarly getting it back here. So this is the first example which is run real-time code to understand how to design a bit field from a memory requirement and then bring it back into the code, and then a very simple usage of it. So let's go back into the presentation and move to the subsequent topic. So we'll move back into the subsequent topic after going into this example. All right. So now when we talk a little bit more in terms of bit field in a structure, right, we have to understand some more details. So for example, suppose we have a structure SF bits, and then here you will see that we have an unsigned integer field 1 with only 1 bit requirement. Then again we have terminated with a semicolon, and then we said unsigned F2 1 bit requirement terminated with another semicolon, and then a full integer F3. There is no bits here, so consider integer is 32-bit system, so it's 4 bytes. So the question here is, how will the compiler work towards memory requirement for this example? So when you say memory requirement, the question is what will be the size of SF bits or size of this particular B? Will it be like 4 bytes for this, followed by 4 bytes of this, followed by 4 bytes of this, thereby resulting in 12 bytes? The answer is generally no, because bit fields, wherever possible, the compiler will try to compact the length of the memory requirement by somehow giving the same memory location. So even though we have written separate semicolon terminated requirement, so we say field 1 1 bit, field 2 1 bit. Now if compiler has already allocated 4 bytes here, if he allocates 4 bytes for integer, only 1 bit we are using, the remaining 31 is not under use, right? So he will just take one of them and then give it F2, and then the remaining 30 is not under use. So compiler will take both this together and create a 4 byte memory area. And then the next one is a F3. F3 requires 4 full 32 bits. So it's a separate memory requirement for 32 bits. So I will go ahead and allocate 4 bytes. So the total requirement here will be now, the total space allocation will be now 8 bytes. Okay, so when you see this, F1 and F3 will be joined together in terms of memory requirement, and that is F1 and F2, sorry. And then F3 will be a 4 bytes separately. So another interesting thing is, we have to think about where do we use, bit fields basically. Okay, so bit fields are used extensively. Very soon I am going to show you, in a TCP header where we send the data, right? So we'll talk about little bit more very soon. So we use it in TCP header, and there will be many places where we use bit fields generally in our kernel, because in the kernel we have, a lot of requirements for bit fields. I will cover a little more about usage in the kernel in few more slides. So having gone through the common understanding of bit field, let's try to understand with some tricky code or a code which will allow us to educate more on the bit fields. So the first question is, what will be the size of memory allocated by the compiler for the following bit field structure? So if you have SF bits, and then we have a F1 1 bit, F2 1 bit, F3 1 bit, right? So all are comma separated now. So 1 byte, 2 bytes, 3 bytes. Since you would have understood bit field by now, I expect that the answer will be correct. So the answer here will be obviously 1 byte. It's an unsigned character. Let's take the next one. So the next one is test2. In this, what will be the size of memory allocated by the compiler for the following bit field structure? So again, I have 3 different unsigned characters here. Each is terminated by a semicolon. So F1 we require 1 bit, F2 we require 2 bits, and F3 require 3 bits. But they are separate declarations inside this structure. So what should be the memory allocation done for it? 1 byte, 2 bytes, or 3 bytes. So as I explained a little bit early, it generally does not matter whether it is comma separated or colon separated. The compiler is intelligent enough to allocate and optimize the space for these choices. So whether it was the previous test, which was test 1, and this test 2, you are going to get the same answer. To validate more, we can easily run this code and we can get the data actually. Okay, so I do have a code in my system where we can run it. Let's move to the third one. Third one is going to be again slightly more interesting. What will be the size of memory allocated by the compiler for the following bit field structures? So in this case, we have an integer requirement. F1, F2, and F3, 1 bits each, supported by integer. So it's a 32-bit area for these 3 bit fields, followed by a requirement for an 8-bit or 1 byte actually, okay, for this F4. So an integer and a character for this bit representation. So, and then this is a full byte. So what should be the answer, whether it is 4 bytes or 5 bytes or 8 bytes? You can pause and resume. So the answer will still be A. Why it is A? Because we are taking out of 32 bits back-to-back 3-bit position. So 29 bits are free. So what compiler would do is he will not allocate 8-bit location for character. He will simply reutilize those 29 bits were there. So he will reutilize 8 bits from that location. So eventually no additional memory location. So it is going to be a 4 byte in this case. Okay. So the next one is data types for bit fields in C, right? So I did have some examples which I covered the detail about. So is data type important? Right? Definitely data type is important in any programming implementations, because you have to really choose whether you want a character or a short or a int or a long, right? So you want a 1 byte, 2 byte, 4 byte, and 8 byte implementations. It all depends on the protocol the hardware representation, how many bytes or how many bits inside a byte do they really require for their operations. Okay, so depending on the hardware or the protocol, we have to decide them. So data type is really important. More than the data type also, you will have representations which are signed versus unsigned. Okay, so they are very important, because generally when we are interfacing with the hardware or any protocols, negative numbers are not of much use. Okay, so we always generally try to use unsigned versions of character, unsigned versions of short or integer or long, because each bit that we are using, they generally store a data, not a negative number. So data types are important, and their unsigned representations are generally the de facto standard in implementation. So when you code with unsigned, it works perfectly fine. It works as expected. But if we start coding with a signed data type or without specifying, then we can have some surprises in our code. Or when we test the code, we'll say certain things are not working. So let's look into this specific example. Okay, so when you look into this example, we have a structure with a character data type, first F1 with 1 bit, F2 with 2 bits, and F3 with 3 bits. So totally 6 bits we require for a character data type. And then we are assigning this value 1 and then 2 and 5 to each one of them, and then we are displaying it, right? So the question is, what will be the real output in your program for these bit field operations? So look into this. What will be the correct output? 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, minus 3, 1, minus 2, minus 3, and minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, right? So I'm giving you 4 choices here. We need to understand, what is the real correct answer here. So some surprising answers can come based on your current understanding of bit fields and then representations in memory for signed versus unsigned data types, right? So we have to really look into this. Before going there, let me run some of these codes, because this is interesting one. I have seen that a lot of people, they don't get it right actually. Okay, so let's go back into the lab where I have already coded for this. We will simply run and then get the answer. The answer is this actually. Okay, the answer is what you see here now. So let's quickly look into the code. So this was the code that you see here. In this code, we had 1, 2, and 5. Ignore the typing alignment here, because okay, so we have some alignment issues. Yeah, so this is F1, F2, F3, and 1, 2, 5. So this is the one that we are going to compile, sf bit4.c. Okay, so when we say sf bit4.c compilation, we'll run it. We have assigned 1 to 5. The answer becomes minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. And the reason for that answer is because we have set character data type for them. If you say character data type, so consider that you have 8 bits of information, right? So you have 8 bits in which 6 bits we are using. And then for each one of them, you are saying it's a character data type. So it's a signed character by default. If it is signed, then we will have a problem, right? So if it is a signed character, as you see here, then most significant bit will always represent a sign. So you will have a problem. So if you look into F1, F1 is how many bits? F1 is only 1 bit actually. If it is 1 bit and you're saying it's a signed bit, it's a sign. That's it. So if you assign 0, it's 0. If you assign 1, so in terms of representation, when you say 1, it's a negative number. It's basically minus 1. So that's the reason it is printing minus 1 here. This is F2. So F2 is what? 2 bits of information. And one of the bits we are saying that it is signed. So when you say 2, so 2 in binary is 1, 0. And then, so which means the 1 goes into the sign. And then there's a 0. So it is basically minus 2 in 2's complement notation. If you extrapolate it, if you try to deduce it, it's basically minus 2. Same thing applies 5. 5 is 101, right? So if 5 is 101, then it is coming out to be minus 3. So some of you, if you are confused, I'm going to just do a conversion of this as a 3-bit entity and then deduce minus 3. So look into this scratchpad once again. Okay, so we'll look into this scratchpad, ignore the upper half. Okay, let's look into how the numbers are getting represented. So if I simply say 5, right? So we said that number b dot we set the b dot f3. b dot f3 equals to 5. 5 in decimal representation, sorry, binary representation is 101. Now we have already told that it is we have kind of already told, right, that this number basically is a most significant bit according to us, and we are writing 1 here. You can see that 1, 1, 1, okay, 0, 1, right? So we have 101, and that itself will create a problem in terms of understanding, right? So if you go here, and when you say 101, this is a sign and 01 is a data. So when you say sign, it is -1 into 2 to the power 3 plus the -1. This is coming, this -1 for this sign, right? And 2 to the power 0, 1, 2. I'm sorry. Yeah. So 2 to the power 2. And then we multiply with 0 for this into 2 to the raised to the power. This is position 2, right? Position, so bit 0, 1. So this position 1. And plus 1 into 2 raised to the power 0. So when you do this, this number is going to be -4, as you know. The next is anyway 0, and then the next is anyway 1, right? So this is 1. So the net is -3. So I think that's what you have seen in the output also for this particular example, right? So even though, sorry, not this example, this example, -3. Okay, so we have to be very careful in terms of saying that, yeah, it generally should not be a signed entity. It should be an unsigned entity. If it is unsigned, then at least our understanding and interpretation both will go hand in hand, correct? All right. Similarly, we have one more slight variation on this, and this is more interesting because one of the field, here I have done a bit field where integer, I am saying 4 bytes, and then field 1 is 3 bits, which is a signed number. And here we have an unsigned value. So we are saying that the other bits, F2, which is only 1 bit, it is an unsigned number. So we are demarcating here the 3 bits is a signed and then the 1 bit is an unsigned. Any idea what will be the output for this code, right? So we have to figure out what's the output. So objective here is this is 3. This is a signed number. So this is 101. I just now deduced this. It is -3. So one of these answer, -3 is correct. Now I told it is an unsigned entity, which means this bit represents a value. We are assigning a value 1. So it has to be 1. There is no other choice. So the answer for this particular problem will be -3, 1. So that's how the significance is in terms of representing a number, whether it's a data type, is a qualifier is signed versus an unsigned qualifier. So we have to be aware of that fact. Okay, so now let's look into some practical examples of, bit feeds. And then being a kernel programmer, right, I have some examples from kernel actually, okay. But the common place where we require bit field is always hardware representations. Hardware, the drivers, they tell us, please send these kind of bits to me to turn this feature on, turn this feature off, to change my state. So as a programmer, we just do what the hardware manual tells us for that hardware. Same thing is applicable for protocol. If you're working in networking protocol, TCP, IP, Ethernet, working on storage protocols, SCSI, fiber channel, bus protocols, PCI, so many are there, right? So when many protocols are there, if the protocols also break it down in terms of bytes and then bytes they break it down in terms of bits, then we have to follow the bit feeds, and that's where C language comes to our rescue. So I'll give you an example about TCP header. It is easy to understand for a lot of people because people understand networking, some elementary requirement. Okay, so let's go into struct TCP header in the Linux tcp.h. So we'll go into one machine where we have the source code. Okay, so we'll go to the source code for this. Already I have opened up. So this is a TCP header. So when you look into TCP header, you will be. It was very interesting to see that you are seeing so many bit fields here. Okay, these examples are very interesting. You can see that they are also using a reserved RES1, which we designed in our code. It's a reserved. So 4 bits are reserved for TCP header for a requirement. Okay. Before I go into there, I will also talk about little bit about U16. So they have made use of U16. U16 basically means that we have a 16-bit memory location unsigned. Okay, so this is not just by chance, this is by design. U means unsigned. It's an unsigned 16-bit memory location, which means that all of these are unsigned. So they really represent a state, either 0 or 1, or in some cases offset. Okay, yeah. So many of these are there as a representation. And this is also a very good example, in my previous class, I talked about little endian versus big endian, right? So the way the data is sent out and received from the system, so if the hardware is a little endian hardware, this is how the memory gets represented. And if the hardware is a big endian hardware, and this is how the memory gets represented. So it's very different. Every byte is interchanged. You can see that. Okay. So there are 2 bytes of information here. So this is getting interchanged in terms of direction. Same thing here also in terms of direction. Okay. All right. So this was just one example, but you can have hundreds of examples, in terms of usage of bit fields in the kernel. So you can always have a kernel source code. Try to see, if you have knowledge about some of the other subsystem, other drivers, other protocols, CPU, many things are there. Even when we work with CPU programming, right, we have to make from kernel mode to user mode to kernel mode. How do? We have to flip a bit. Similarly, if you have to enable the virtual memory architecture in the kernel, then you flip a bit, right? So I think these are bit related operations anyways. So C language, is always comes to our rescue. C language is the language for a lot of system level programming. Okay, so I try to give you some perspective about usage of bit fields in C, and then programming with a simple design. I hope you understood the concept. Thank you very much for looking into this class video, and I will see you in the next class. Thank you, and bye for now. Thanks for watching the video. We have put important links in the description and the comment section below. If you really enjoyed our video, please press the like button below. We plan to release one video per week. So go ahead and subscribe to Sand Foundry by pressing the subscribe button below and turning on the notification bell.